Hello all, this is Saurav signing in. And in continuation to what's new in 2023 release wave 1, there's one more question that we ask, as in how you can create a new Business Central database for Business Central on-premise. Yes, we get Kronos database, but in some cases we might need to start fresh with a blank database, and that's where this video will help you. So let's try to understand in this video what are those steps and how you need to execute those. So before we get into it, let's understand what kind of databases we have in Business Central. Business Central databases are a collection of two types of database, application and tenant database, which is from Business Central SaaS, even on-premise perspective if you want. The application database stores data that defines the application and its business logic, which is majorly objects and the code of your application. And the data that is in the application database is common to all the tenants that you have. Now, regarding the tenant database is referred as a tenant because the tenant database stores the actual business data for a specific companies. So you can have multiple companies in one tenant or you can have single company in a tenant. And that database only stores the tenant specific data for the companies inside that tenant. If you want to use a single tenant deployment, which is commonly done in an on-premise environment, then the application data and business data are stored in the same database, which is then called application database. But if you have a multi-tenant deployment, then you will create an application database and then one or more tenant database. So let's start from there. So in the previous videos, we have talked about how to create service and all, and we'll be using that today. All the commands that I'll be showing in this video, you can either run it on PowerShell ISE or Business Central Administration Cell. So the first thing that we do in PowerShell ISE is import our module related to Business Central version that we are working on so that PowerShell understand what commands I'm trying to run. So now let's run this and we get all the commands. So now if you go up into the new area, you will see that there is a new nav database. Now let's understand what this command is before we do anything further. So let's go to help and see what it is. So the new nav database is to create a new Business Central database from a backup file. So if you have a backup file, let's say of a Kronos database from the product DVD, or you get a database file, backup file from one of your friend whom you would like to help, and he have a scenario that is backed up on that database backup file. In those scenarios, you will use the new nav database command to restore that backup. But this is what we don't want to do. And that's why I gave you a small introduction about two different type of databases. So now what we want to do is do a new nav application database, because this is the database which will be used in our case of a single tenant installation will act as application as well as the tenant database. So let's see what parameters are there. So I'll change it to this and I'll zoom it for you. Sometimes there are comments that it is not visible. So let's see what parameters are there when we try to do a new nav application database. The first one is a database server or database name, which I'll call PC22 dev. That's what I want to call my database. Then there is collation. So if you are into setting up collations, you can do that. Otherwise, by default, the collation that is set is latent 1 journal 100 case sensitive and CSAS. If you have a different collation which is supported by SQL Server, then you can use that here, but it is not mandatory. The database location is where you would like to place these files related to that database. So what I would like to do is store all my files in this particular folder. So let's copy that, paste it here, and then the database server where I would like to do that. So my SQL Server is localhost. If you are doing it on a remote computer, I'm sure that this will support you. Let's see. Hmm. Yes, specify the name of the computer that is running SQL Server and the database instance on which you would like to host the new database. Okay, so if you are using an instance, then you also specify that into the database server. So if you have localhost slash SQL 2019 or 2020, you need to provide that in this format. But like in my case, I have just one instance, which is the default instance of SQL Server. So I'll just specify a local host. And I don't have a database with that name at this point. And then rest remains same. The specify the location of database file, collision as we talked about. The default one is CSAS, let in one journal, and that's it. Okay. So let's head back and let's try to run this, and we'll see a new database popped up in my SQL Server with this name. Okay, so once you run it, it'll add that database here as it is running it. If you see, it's coming up, still running, and I should see some files being created in my folder, which is these two files which just got created. Okay, and you see a summary here that the database has been created. Great. So my database is in place. Let's see what's in it. If I look at from the SQL perspective, let me refresh this and get into tables. It has some tables which are related to the application part. Okay. If you want to dig deep into it, let me know. We'll get into this someday if needed. But this is how you create a database. Now, but to access this database, you need to map it to a service. So what we'll do, we'll just copy this name. We'll go to our folder where our services are hosted. If you remember, we created an instance. If you don't know how to create one, go ahead and watch the previous video that we have. And I'll change this custom setting.config in my GitHub. Oh, sorry, in my VS Code. And I'll change the database name property. Where is my database name property? Yes, from BC22CU0US to my new name, which is BC22dev. Now this service will point to this database. Okay, I've done that. I hope so. This is done. Okay, this should be saved. Okay, this is saved. Let's close it. Now this service is already mapped to a web server instance. So we'll try to restart this service. Once we restart, it will check the mappings to this database and we'll try to start it. If that does not happen, because I doubt this will happen. Oh, it did happen. Great. Otherwise, I need to make sure that my service account, which in this case is network service, is also mapped to this database, which had been done automatically. But okay, that has been done. The next thing that we should do is we should try to log into this environment. Not this one, the BC22 dev. So let's refresh this. This is my web instance pointed to this. It is from the cache, but it says now that there's an error. Okay, that means I'll have to do something else also. So now let's understand what other steps are. Now I need to tell it that what this database is, which application version it kind of maps to. And to do that, first let's see what it is mapped to. And that you can do with the get nav application commandlet, and you give it a service name this time. My service name is BC22dev. Okay, let's see what I get out of it. I get nothing. So it has no application version and no application family. So it have no clue what version this database is from. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a set nav application. Now in this, I need to set some properties in it. The first one is service instance, which in my case is BC22 dev. It's the service name also, surprisingly, but that's okay. You need to give the service name. And then the application version. The application version need to be given in a format of major, minor, build, and revision. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I also have a Cronus environment pointing on a BC220 service. So what I'll do is I'll copy this because I have one more service which is pointing to the Cronus database, which is this. So what I'll do is I'll do run the same command that I ran previously, and I say BC220 to see what are the suggested settings. And here I know that the application version should be set to this because I knew that it is version 22, CU0, but I didn't knew these numbers. And I don't remember, want you to remember this. So you can copy this, paste it here, and that will be set on your new database, which is mapped to the server. One thing very important here that you need to force this. This does not work without force. So I'll just copy this so that if somebody needs it and comments it later, I have this command available also. Okay, because I surely get asked about these, and I'll also copy the new nav application database thing. Okay, I'll document it later, but this one will set the application version on my service, which is to my database. So let's run this, and it's set. Now if I do a get on my BC22 dev, I should see that it is mapped. Okay, what happened on the browser? Let's see. Let's try that again. There is still some errors. It doesn't understand it. Okay, and the reason is that it does not know anything at this point about the objects that you have, and it has no clue. So what we need to do now is the next command is to sync my tenant. Because that's how it will know that it is uh, single tenant. If you have multiple tenant, then there are different steps to this. And my server instance is also called BC22 dev. Okay, let's run this, synchronize this, and it's just keeping that in sync. Okay, let's go back home. Anything now? Come on, try that. Now Business Central still says that I cannot open any company. There are no companies in the database. You need to have a company. Let's go up and see, is there a new nav company thing? Okay, here is one, the new nav company. To log into a client, I need a company. Okay, so let's create a new company over here, and we'll call this as demo company, and the server instance is BC22 dev. Company display name, demo. Is it an evaluation company? I don't want it to be evaluation company. And let's copy this. I have a tendency to run it, but I'm just copying this so that I can share this command that if needed. Let's run this, and it created a new company. Okay, now we created a company. Now let me at least log in and let me see what's in there. Okay, no, it's still not allowing me. Now what I'm missing is important. So at this point, if you go back into your SQL Server and if you refresh your database, it have other basic settings set. But if you notice that there are no tables, more or less, there are some system tables, but there are no tables which are important for a client to load, which means I'll need some apps to be installed on this environment. Now, let's go into the product DVD, and there's a folder called application. We know most of our objects are part of base app. So let's get into the base app, and let's see the base app. There's a base app. So I'll copy it as path. And the first thing that I would like you to do is to do a get nav app info, which gives you information about the app that you have. So what I'm saying, just tell me anything about this app, the base application. So when I run it, it tells me certain details about this app. What are those details? It tells me that this is the app ID, this is the app name, this is the app version, who created it, uh, so on and so forth, description, and things like that. One important thing to notice here is dependencies. It says that it cannot be installed until unless there is a system application. So that means the first step that I need to do is in system application. So let's go back and search for system application. Here it is. Okay, let's copy this one also as a path. Maybe this has dependencies, and let's run it through in this command again. Okay, are there any dependencies? No, which means I can actually install a system application at this moment. How you install an app? And I guess I've talked about it so many times, but you do install nav app, your service name, which is pc22-dev, and then the path, which is this. With this command, it will install the system app. Uh-oh, I ran through it. It is not an install. First, you need to publish the nav app. Publish nav app. Sometimes you kind of move forward from your steps. So when you publish the app will be available in the environment. The next thing that you need to do is sync nav app with the server instance while this is running. It can take a while sometime based on how big the app is. And then the app name. My app name is system application. How I know that? It will be available here called system application. So the next parameter is in the sync is name. It is not, the IntelliSense is not showing me because the first command is still running and I'm just moving ahead in my steps. And the last but not least is install nav app and then the same format. So let's wait for it to be published. It's taking a lot of time. It should not, but it is. Let's go back in SQL Server and see what's happening here. Okay. It seems nothing at this moment, which is a little bit weird. But there's something happening in here where it is trying to install the app. And it's just validating that does everything looks okay, is everything kind of part of it. So we'll wait for it, and it got published. Now once it is published, it is not yet available in your environment. So what you need to do is you need to sync that and install that. So let's run these both together. And if everything goes good, the system app should be synced and get installed in my database, the newly created database that I just did. So let's wait for it for a while. And technically the system application is not that big, but I guess it's growing with every version. So now if you look at it, it is inserting something into the application object metadata and it got published, synced and installed. Let's go back to our browser and see can we do it now. Not this one. Okay. Okay. We have something. We have something. So we are in the right direction. Now it says welcome to Business Central. Okay. There's nothing. It says company demo, which we created a while ago. And if I look into the extension management, I can see that I have only one extension installed called system application, which is great. Now let's try to repeat the same step, but now this time for the base app or the base application. Where is my base application? Okay, my base application is not here. I should close this. It's somewhere here. Okay, Let's get back to base app. Go to my source, pick the app, copy as path, and let me paste it here in the second one. My app name is base application. Okay, this one will take some time because this is one of the biggest app in the system. So let's try to publish this and let's wait. With this app installed, the base app, we'll get a lot of objects in our database because all the objects are kind of part of this app as we move forward. So whatever you see right now came from the system app, all these tables. And as the installation of the base app happens, it kind of will bring all the apps that are needed. Once that happens, we will be in a stage where we can log into a full-fledged business central environment. But there's one major step that you need to remember if you are going this route for creating a new database. And we'll talk about it once this is over. So let's wait for this to be over. Okay. So this got published, the base app. Now let's try to sync and install both of them together for the base app. Now, as this is happening, I just want to make sure that you know about it, that it takes a lot of time to publish at least the base app, and I'm pretty sure sync will also take a longer time. What I'm doing while recording this video is pausing where it is taking a longer time. So don't expect to run that command exactly at the speed that you're watching video because it's not the same speed. I'm taking pauses in while recording this. So it takes a lot of time because there are a lot of tables and a lot of objects that comes in when you install a base app. And now if you see, it already have those objects with the table name, or sorry, the company name here, that you see all these tables added. And they're being added as we are speaking while the sync and install is happening. So while you're following this video, don't expect it to run at the pace of video because this is happening in parallel while I'm pausing this video and letting the process complete itself. Okay, so I'll pause again to see how long the sync and install takes. Okay, so the base app also gets synced and installed. So we should be more or less good at this point. So let's go back to our browser and let's refresh this, see what happens. So at this point, this particular tenant or database have all the objects that comes from Microsoft, which you can see now, it seems. Let's go back and, oh, because there are no profiles loaded, it kind of shows you as empty, but because there is no data at this moment. When I say no data means no data. There's technically zero data at this moment. Oh, the profiles are there. So that means I need to set this up for myself. So let me go to my settings and choose a role. Let's say I become a business manager. Click OK. It should refresh this and show me the business manager role center. And these will be part of the install of the base app that kind of gets loaded automatically. So once this gets loaded, we will be there. Now, one important thing. At this point, your database is more or less operational. And at this point, you're open to install any other app that you need on this environment, which are so many apps from Microsoft if you look at it. And I'm not saying that you will need all of them, but based on the region that you are and the business that the customer have, you might want to utilize some of the good or the great features that are available in Business Central. Let's have a look on those. I would highly recommend you to have an API report finance because if a customer integrates to Power BI, this extension contain that report pack more or less. You should have API installed, extension installed because these will be needed for any external integration. We did install application already. Um, we have the base app. If they are into payroll, then this is one of the app. Client add-ins, that's needed. because if there are built-in add-ins from Microsoft that you should use, if they are into you know manufacturing demo data set which is not for the production for sure, then they can use these. They should use data archive, which is there. Data search is important. I'm pretty sure every customer is using emailing, and these are all those apps. Business heading is important. If they are into image analysis, you should get that in. Master data management, one of the new feature in Business Central 2022. You should use it. Universal print, if they need something on the printing. Permissions, very important because they come as extension now. Um, Anything else? Report layouts. Okay, if they are into Shopify, then Shopify. Otherwise, if you remember, we did not install one of the app, which is this. Now, if you get into extension management, and then I'll tell you the last important thing which you need to make sure that you have a base and a system application. Now, think about the developer who will be working for this environment. And the way a developer works is he creates a Visual Studio Code extension and then tries to connect to the environment without specifying any dependencies after the initial versions of AL for sure. And how Microsoft is able to do it is with this extension called application. And it's pretty interesting how this is built. This have no source code, to be very fair. And when you open this code of application extension into your VS Code, you'll see that there is no source code into this, but there is an app.json which defines a dependency automatically on system app and base app. And that's the reason when you're creating an extension in Business Central, you don't have to specify these dependencies explicitly because there is an application extension installed. So whenever you are installing or building your database this way, even if it is not uh, one of the kind of mandatory step, I would highly recommend that you also install Microsoft application extension, which is as similar as we did earlier. So I'll just copy this and I'll copy this. Okay. And the beauty is that it'll install that extension instantly and help the developers who are working for building extension for this particular environment. Okay, let's say application, and this is application. I should be able to run all three together, and that just installs that extension instantly because there is nothing in that extension from a term of source code or objects, more or less. So these are the minimum three extensions that you need to start with, and that's okay. If you want to see a demo of installing another Microsoft extension, you can, let's try one of those and then we get over with it. Let's use one important one for sure, or two important one. One is the permission, so let's pick that and let me install both of them. So let me do a copy as path, and this time I'll replace this path with this one. We'll call this as on-prem permissions, and I think this is called on-prem permission. We don't call this. And then one more thing, which is also important, is my localized permission, which is North America in this case. I'll just pick this path again and just paste it in here. Okay. And then this becomes on permission NA, on-prem permissions NA. So, and using the same methods, you can install all the extensions that you need. So we just installed those and it failed for some reason. What is that? Okay. There is a different name for this extension. So let me see. And you can see what the extensions you have with the get nav app info server instance BC200, oh sorry, 22 dev. Is that the right thing? Yeah. So the name of the extension in this case includes a bracket. I should have mentioned that. So I'll just install this and sync this. No issues. Done. Let's go back to my environment And let's try to search for extension management again to see does these extension kind of part of my environment. Yes, they are. So these would be the minimum set of extensions that you should be installing. I'm pretty sure there are other business needs which will require you to install other extension, but these are the bare minimum steps what we discussed in this video to create a database from scratch, from nothing, and there will be no data until unless it's part of the company initialization process using Code Unit 2 typically. So if you have a need, I don't know, but if you actually have a need, you can follow these steps. Let's summarize by looking at PowerShell what we did so that we know what we did. Okay, going up. The first thing that we did is we installed the Business Central module for the version that we want to create. If you want to do it for Business Central 21, just change it to that. Then we created a new application database. Then we did set application based on getting the application from the Cronus environment. What is the get application returns in that case? And then we know the application version. We need to remember that there is a force at the end. Then you synchronize the environment. Then you created a new company in the environment. And then just to bring all the objects in, we installed publish sync and installed the system app, the base app, and the application for developers because this app is important for developers. And then, as I said, you can have 10, 15 different apps, and you just need to follow the 3 steps publish, sync, and install for each and every app. At this point, a Business Central database that you just created using PowerShell is completely operational, and you'll be able to utilize it for your implementation or whatever you would like to do it with. So if there are any questions in any of the part that we discussed today, please let me know in comment section and I'll be super happy to reply to you on your questions. If you learn something new, I think it's your responsibility to share this video with your colleagues and friends so that other people can also learn with us. If you're new to this channel, please do subscribe to this channel. So there will be a lot of content coming up for Business Central. So I'll see you next day with the next good content about Business Central. Have a nice day.